Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of St. Rose Television's brand new show, Knight's Declassified College Survival Guide. I'm your host, TJ Gibson, and today we're going to be discussing one of the absolute most important topics for just about every college student everywhere, time management. Now, as far as topics in academia go, time management is one of the absolute most important because it is not only one of the most difficult skills to master for most college students, myself definitely included, but it is also paramount to your academic success and ultimately your future workplace success as you transition into your chosen field. So while it's an area that might be a little daunting to even consider, it's one that is nonetheless incredibly important to work on. Thus, I'm going to lay out for you 3 of the best and most proven strategies for developing a strong foundation of time management skills, which are broad enough to work for just about everyone, regardless of how far along you currently are in your college career, what your area of study is, or how much time you have in your hands outside of class. Exciting, right? So let's get into it. First and foremost, before we get into anything else, I have to stress what is probably the single most important component of strong time management, which is the absolute critical step of developing a system. This is so important because the entire trick of time management is, in its essence, hinged upon your learning ability to systematically organize your life so as to be as productive as possible with the limited time that you're afforded each day. Some examples of this systematic organization might include something as simple as experimenting with what times a day you do your best work or what environments allow you to focus best. Or it might even be something more effort-intensive like buying and sticking to a planner, which can be absolutely paramount to maintaining both a well-organized school life and a strong work-play balance. This is especially true if you're someone who needs the help of an external source to keep track of your schedule and hold yourself accountable, as is the case with many college students. But regardless of your strategies, having some kind of personalized system built around optimizing your time, energy, and productivity is absolutely essential to your academic and overall professional success. And speaking of strategies and productivity, one seemingly universally effective strategy for making the often overwhelming assignments that will inevitably be thrown your way in college seem much more manageable and even considerably less time-consuming is to break them up into smaller, quicker chunks and knock them out that way. It's a strategy that's been promoted so much by so many different sources that I could probably dedicate an entire episode just to this topic alone. And its proliferation is not without good reason. This strategy is incredibly effective because it can not only make your workload significantly less daunting and more manageable, but can actually improve your ability to focus on each assignment and complete them in a timely manner. Now, as far as chunking assignments goes, there's 2 ways to do this, and they really depend on a combination of how intensive your assignments are and what works for you. One way is to knock out parts of assignments at a time. So for a larger assignment like an essay, you might take maybe an hour or 2 here to do your research and outlining, another hour or 2 there to write your first draft, and a final hour or 2 to revise and finalize, or some similar arrangement. Taking this approach is especially beneficial to larger and more time-consuming assignments, as breaking them down into more immediately digestible chunks not only makes them seem less overwhelming at first glance, but also enables you to work much more intensely during each short burst chunk, thus likely saving considerable amounts of time. Another way to chunk your assignments is to take some of the smaller and/or easier assignments on your agenda and commit to swiftly knocking them out in their entirety, so as to very quickly free up space in your schedule for bigger, badder assignments later on, thus making your overall workload seem significantly less daunting from a time management perspective. So, for example, let's say you have 1 large assignment due in 3 weeks and 3 smaller ones due in 4, meaning you have 4 total assignments due in the next month. What might work well for you here is, instead of doing these assignments in order of their due date and thus letting several assignments hang over your head the whole time, you simply dedicate this first week to just completely wiping out all 3 of those smaller assignments as soon as possible, thereby leaving only the 1 large assignment to tackle for the following 2 weeks, during which time you can dedicate all of your time, energy, and focus to that assignment. This conquer and divide approach should, in theory, work exactly like the single assignment chunking by enabling you to focus more intensely on each chunk and complete your remaining work more quickly. The only caveat here is that if you're going to take this approach and knock out entire assignments at once, you must be vigilant enough to make sure that you're completing these assignments long in advance of their due dates, not the night before they're due, as the time shortage-induced panic mode this will inevitably send you into is not only counterintuitive, but ultimately defeats the purpose of practicing time management to begin with. Plus, completing assignments long in advance of their due dates is a bona fide time management superpower in and of itself, because while deadlines can sometimes seem far off, they always approach fast. And the sooner you can clear them off your mind, the better for your time and your brain. And procrastination can really be Speaking of which, procrastination, the great perennial plague of college students everywhere, has to be, without a doubt, the #1 killer of great time management. Thus, its place in this episode is a no-brainer. And it makes sense that procrastination is such an easy trap for college students to fall into, what with so much overwhelming work and the sweet temptations of friends, hobbies, and even sleep. But staving it off is absolutely integral to your success. This is particularly true in your upper class years. As assignments get bigger, free time gets smaller, and the beginning of your professional life is looming just around the corner. That being said, though, being plagued by procrastination is far from an academic death sentence. That is, there are ways around it. You see, the thing about procrastination is that, regardless of what exactly you're procrastinating from, it always boils down to a struggle between work that needs to be done and something else that you would rather be doing, like hanging out with friends, watching Netflix, or playing that new video game. Thus, procrastination does its worst damage during times when you let that struggle slip too far in the direction of doing what you'd rather do instead of what you need to do. That is, when you continually push the need to do's off so much that all of a sudden you find yourself still outlining a 10-page essay the night before it's due. No bueno. But it's totally okay if this happens to you, because the basic and predictable nature of procrastination means that there's a very simple way to combat it. What you need to do is set up a system of prioritization and rewards, treating your need to do's as priorities to be addressed now and your rather do's as rewards later for having completed your need to do's first. So if, say, you have a big project due next week, but Netflix just dropped the new season of one of your favorite shows today, it will probably be extremely tempting for you to binge that show now and push your work to later, which is totally understandable because, again, that temptation happens to all of us. But if you can just bring yourself to instead say, no, I'm going to get this project done now and reward myself with this binge later, as way easier said than done as that may be, you'll not only avoid the aforementioned panic of having to crunch an assignment last minute, but you'll also make watching the show or spending time with friends, playing video games, or whatever it is that's tempting you to procrastinate so much more enjoyable, as you won't have a looming deadline constantly hanging over you like some imposing black cloud of irresponsibility. And trust me, just that relief alone is something you'll be very thankful for. In conclusion, just keep in mind that time management, like many other things in life, is very much about finding what works for you, which likely isn't quite as simple as I may be making it sound in this episode. The ironic truth is that the development of time management itself is something that takes time and, well, management. So don't beat yourself up if it's something you really struggle with at first, or if it seems to take you forever to find your groove. You see, time management is a skill that most of us don't just pick up in a day, but rather develop over time as we learn through much trial and error what works for us as individuals and what doesn't. And of course, as individuals, everyone is different. So while much insight can certainly be gleaned from observing the systems and habits of successful others or listening to advice from someone like me, at the end of the day, if something doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And that's okay. Simply accept what is and move on to other strategies, figuring things out as you go. Ultimately, as long as you're committed to the path of excellence, you're committed to the right path. Thank you so much for joining me on this first stop of this incredible journey as we endeavor to survive college together, 1 week at a time. As always, I'm your host, TJ Gibson. See you next time.